Alright guys, today we have Diabloceratops, a defensive dinosaur that has unique movement. It defies how the game works, and trying to balance this thing has been a pain since it got released. However, I'm going to give it a shot, and aside from one obvious overkill factor, most of it is just of a technical nature. And devs have been sparring, pun intended, with the Diablo to get it to work properly. As the nature of most of the fixes is technical, it's entirely possible devs have already been trying this, just without good results. Once again, I'll be dividing the video into 3 sections: what I think devs intended it to be, the issue, and solution. So let's get into that. I think the devs have intended for Diablo to be a very defensive dinosaur, able to hold its own with superior movement and powerful attacks to punish anything that ends up in front of its deadly horns. Spar mode was intended for Diablo on Diablo action primarily, but helps it a lot when being hunted to cover all sides and flanks. And yeah, basically it was meant to move around in a herd. You can see that from it having sparring mode and all that. And that said, this new technical movement system has also introduced technical issues with how the game functions, and we will get straight into that right away. The issue. The first issue on the list, the one that everyone seems to strongly agree on, aside from a few people who enjoy the benefits of it, and that is their weight. I have been searching for various studies and estimates, and the heaviest a Diabloceratops has been estimated to weigh is around 1.8 tons, and we could even give it the benefit of the doubt and be generous and say 2 tons at best. In the Evrima, your weight is basically your HP, so Diablo being 3 tons gives it effectively 3000 HP, making it a little bit too tanky if you ask me. Now that was the easy one. Let's get into more technical aspects that I think are very problematic. The biggest one, and I must say I did see massive improvements on this over time, so the devs have been working on it. It used to be way worse, but it's still slightly problematic to this day. Evrima works with a prediction system that predicts your movement to ensure immediate responsiveness. The server periodically compares your predicted position with the actual position it calculates, and on Diablo this seems to break a little bit. I assume that most of this system assumes that dinosaurs can only move forward and rotate at a certain pace, if not alt-attacking. So the moment a Diablo enters sparring mode and is able to move backwards and strafe sideways, everything stops making sense to this system and it just breaks. The issue that actually becomes visible to other players is that they are receiving visual misinformation. For example, a Diablo having its back to watch you, but on their screen they are staring deep into your eyes. You go in for an attack and surprise, you are suddenly on the floor. Also, updates to where it's facing are more delayed than on other dinosaurs. I have seen massive improvements, but it's still nowhere near perfect compared to how we see the rest of the roster update their movement. Almost in real time actually, and if you take hyping out of the equation. Additionally, and this makes things even more painful, the Diablo is able to send you flying by holding left mouse button, and even stun things up to twice its own weight. While that in itself is not really a problem, and I'm totally fine with it, the real painful part is that there is no cooldown after this attack, preventing Diablo to attack again and again. And I am talking about their famous punt backwards alt that almost happens at the same time, without an interval, or even their ability to just spam the punt attack over and over and over, so they have a high attack frequency basically, while also being built like a literal tank, so you cannot go for the intervals without getting punished heavily. Another issue is the Diablo's damage box. Instead of being able to damage targets in front of them, their hitbox is surprisingly generous and able to hit things on their left and right flank, kind of at the front leg when attacking forward. So let's get into the fixes for this 3-ton train that can go Michael Jackson on you. Alright, the solution. I think it could get its weight nerfed back down to 2 tons. Its head receives only 25% of the damage you deal, and I think that is more than enough to survive with. Its body should not become a damage cushion able to take so many hits. Also, the Diablo logic in their prediction system could use a little bit more polish until we get proper visual updates. They're getting really close today, Like, I did see massive, massive, massive improvements. I have to underline that. And in short, nobody likes the Dino stuff they could not see. So I'm happy they did make improvements, because it makes the game feel cheaper than it actually is when you can't. And I do think this is a wonderful game at the end of the day that is still definitely on top of the Dino game genre in general. Also, a cooldown of 1.5 seconds after punting would be appreciated before it can attack again to create these intervals and allow punishing. And since knockover recovery is like 2 seconds at a minimum and like 4 seconds at max, poor Cardo, I think 1 second after a punt is still enough to follow up with the gore attack. However, it would no longer be able to punt spam and then slide into an alt attack in the same second. Also, the damage hitbox should be further reduced until it's actually in front of the head and on its horns, so no longer a bloated damage hitbox that also covers part of the flanks. It's incredibly strong head-on, and I see no reason why it needs to have more hand-holding on defending their flanks, especially when they have incredible movement system at their disposal. Also, the punt attack is incredibly punishing if you get hit by it, so leg correction should be absolutely at a minimum for it, so you can have a fun experience while fighting it. Because at the moment Diablo and Stego are strongly avoided, unless you play Sarah, due to the instant death to leg correction attacks. I think if these 4 fixes are applied and correctly applied, especially the visual information and the damage hitbox, like those are the 2 primary ones, then we would get a herbivore that is able to defend itself and is also equally huntable. It would not lose out on any damage, I don't want to nerf any of that, but it would be nice if players can attack it with proper coordination and not get bullshit hit. Might have actually missed a spot on this one, or maybe even a buff they need in other aspects in survival itself, and forgive me, I'm not a huge fan of playing herbivores, so that might have flown right over my head. I think the Dinosaur is very fun to play though, in a combat scenario, and it feels nice to pilot as it's capable of brawling quite nicely in my honest opinion. Like it can slide, it can drift, it can do quite a lot. But if I did miss something, you agree or disagree, just let me down below and stay tuned for the next one.